Hello, consumers of the written word. It is I, Sir Chonk here, with my January reading recap. I think that's what we're calling it. So yeah, a little late, but I read 18, I got 18 books here. Although this one, the first one I'm going to talk about, technically I finished at the very end of December, but there's a reason why I'm including it. So me and College Girl have sort of a reading challenge we gave each other this year. We each gave each other 12 books for the other one to read.
We're suffering through the stand now.
College Girl whining about good books in the background. I was forced to wade through her fecal matter all month. So I read 11 of the 12 that she gave me this month. This month has a lot of books I would not traditionally read. Some other stuff mixed in that I would like, but a lot of sort of weird options for me this month because a lot of them are from her list. So anyway, here we go. I'm trying to talk about too much of each one. First one, which I finished, I think, actually December 30th, so it's a little bit cheating, but it was the first one that I read on the Coleridge Girl Challenge list. It's The Spear Cuts Through Water, a book that a lot of people really seem to like. I kind of was massively disappointed in this. Of all the ones she gave me, this is the one I thought I would like the most. It's got some fun fantasy elements. Some of the writing is good. But it's just sort of like the most interesting characters hardly get any camera time. The main characters are just these two boring ass vanilla meatballs I don't care at all about. The sort of, the attempt to write in the second person, I think, is just really like off-putting and doesn't work well at all for me. And the ending I thought was really crappy. There are a few good parts that I liked. I liked the villains. The problem is the villains get dispatched so quickly. It's like playing one of those video games where you get to the villain and then they kill him and they move on to the next villain. And it's like, well, those guys were decent. We want more of those. So I wish they had more of those guys. Overall, I didn't hate this. I didn't like it. I think I gave it a 2. All right. Let's see. My next book here up on the list is a little buried in the pile. I should have had better foresight.
This is your favorite
It's
of the month, right?
the 7. Were you doing spoilers back there? So this is the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Does not die 7.5 times, so the title's a bit of a lie. But yeah, this was the second one on my College Girl Challenge list. And this was probably my favorite book of the month. I really like this. It's like a murder mystery where the main character jumps into different people's bodies and relives the day. So it's like kind of like a Rashomon Groundhog Day kind of thing. And it's interesting because as they in each person's body they inhabit, although they keep their consciousness and their memories for the time being, they also sort of adapt some of their skills and weaknesses, which is pretty cool. So it's not just like, oh, they see this person's perspective, they see that person's perspective. They also take on some of their skills and faults, which makes it for a pretty interesting read. Really like this a lot. Would recommend it for sure. High end, 4 out of 5 stars.
And you're a Chonk, and you weren't offended by because a lot of people are like, oh, it's fat phobic because that's a fat character.
You're allowed to have fat characters in books.
As long as they're not like portrayed as like.
As long as you don't insult how they're fat constantly like Stephen King would. All right. So there's that. I don't want giving you the book. All right. So the next book, I'm going to pause briefly here. So should be an image here. I don't own this book. I read this on Kindle. It's House of Good Bones by T. Kingfisher.
Well, we own the ebook.
And they don't care. The point is, I'm not going to show the ebook. So I liked, what the heck was the fairy tale one that I read? Metal and Bone by the same writer. So I said, oh, let's try another one. This is also pretty decent. I think it's funny. The narrator is generally pretty entertaining. It's really short. She likes to write short books. And generally speaking, this was kind of a cool ghost story sort of thing. The ending is a little hit and miss for me, but overall I'd say I liked it. But the main thing that works for this book, in my opinion, is the narrator is very entertaining and the dialogue is very good. So if you haven't read T. Kingfisher and you like sort of clever narration, witty dialogue, then this is a good writer for you to take on. I'm just going to go ahead. Hold on. I'm just going to jump to the next T. Kingfisher book, which is What Moves the Dead, also on Kindle. So I don't have that one either. But I read, the problem I think I had with this one is I read it too soon after House of Good Bones. There's only one book between reading those two books. And I think with this particular writer, and that she has a very distinctive style, but she doesn't vary that style very much. So although I really enjoy it, reading another book by her so soon after the other one, where it's meant to be different characters in a different setting and everything else, but it reads very similarly, didn't work for me. So I think I probably would have liked this a little bit more if I had put more time. Because, like, you know, the essentially, like, writing the same narrative character, but they're supposed to be a different character, wouldn't have been so bothersome if I hadn't just read it. This is also supposed to be a like a retelling of the House of Usher. And, I mean, it adds some stuff. Obviously, it's like what was way, way longer, of course. It's a novel instead of like an 18-page short story. But I was disappointed. I didn't hate it. It still had a lot of things I would like. I would like it more again if I think I had waited to read it. But solid, like a 3. But not great. All right. College Girl reminded me I should congratulate myself for already passing my Goodreads goal of reading 2 books on the year. I've blown past that. I'm like 950% past my goal. So good job, me. Got my Goodreads goal by like January 2nd, I think. So that's pretty good. All right. So I got to find this other book that I didn't like. Where is this crap? Maybe I should pause it. Or I could just keep talking pointlessly while I look for a book. Is this good YouTube? It's not. Aha! So, My Sweet Audrina by V.C. Andrews, a writer I would never read, but once again was forced to by the Coleridge Girl list. So the Kingfisher books were not a Coleridge Girl forcing. But this is the third one of the 12 I have to read. And this was weird. It's basically like a bunch of strange as hell people doing messed up stuff, and the author's just like, how much can I make you uncomfortable with annoying characters in a book? I know a lot of people really like this. I wouldn't say I hated it, but I just barely didn't hate it.
I think a lot of people like it for the reasons you just said, though.
Yeah, I guess they like just like the horrible, stupid pointlessness. There's not even like any rhyme or reason to what's happening. It's just like, she's just like, well, what if I have this terrible thing happen? And what if I say this also happens? Like, it's just like a string of dopiness. I don't know. It was dumb. I feel like there's certain groups of readers will appreciate just like the stupidity of this. Not to say that they're stupid. Sometimes you just like stuff that's kind of dumb, and I could get that appeal. It just wasn't for me.
It's so over the top that it's entertaining.
I really didn't like it. I was just begging for it to end. I mean, I read it really fast. I think I read it like a day. I think it's not really fast. Mostly because I just wanted it to end. So I was like, I'm just going to power through this so it will end so I can stop reading it. I do not recommend. Unless you really hate books that are good. All right, so next up was the 4th, I believe, challenge, College Girl Challenge. And this is something I was looking forward to a lot to read. I don't know why I'm showing you. Oh, yeah, this is the first part. This is the Blackstone Chronicles by John Saul, and he was copying Stephen King's Green Mile thing, and he released it in 6 segments. The problem with doing a serialized book, if you're John Saul, apparently, is you don't get the point. So the point of serialization is you're telling one long story, okay, sure, and you're kind of ending each part, presumably in some sort of cliffhangery sort of way. Oh, I can't wait for the next installment. That kind of maneuver, right? But these are basically like, it's kind of like a short story. Well, I guess it'd be a novella collection where there's like a unifying sort of frame story, but the individual stories don't really connect that much. A lot of the characters overlap, but it's more like it's a one-shot story within the collection of this world. And that didn't work for me at all. Luckily I didn't read it as serialized. I just read it all at once. But I mean, it was disappointing. And also, I heard a lot about John Saul. He was like one of the better horror writers of like the 80s and 90s. And I never read anything by him. So I was really excited to read this. And he's kind of a crap writer. At least this book was. It's like, it's a mess. It's redundant. The characters, there's not a single character in this 6 books that I cared about even a tiny bit. I didn't even hate any of them. They were just like empty nothings. So this was majorly disappointing. Didn't like this at all, and probably it'll be unlikely I'd check out anything else by John Saul.
I think it's one of those things you read, like, old 70s horror, 80s, 90s horror, you know, like, sometimes you just miss the bus, I think, on it.
I mean, yeah, it could be one of those things where I would have liked it if I had read it way back.
Right.
Way back yonder.
19 when I read it.
But I didn't read it then, and so I didn't like it. All right, so I read this thing. This is... Yeah, I guess I can talk to this one. So, this is The Outsider by Stephen King, and now an HBO series. It tells you on the sticker, which I've seen. I saw the series in advance, so obviously spoilers are going to be for me. But I recently got Holly for a present, the Stephen King book Holly, not my cousin Holly. Why would I get a present of my cousin? But anyway,
no one knows you're cousin Holly.
Now they do. So anyway, I knew kind of what I was going into for this, but I was told you can't really, there's a lot of Holly-related spoilers in her previous books, which I believe, because she talks about the Mr. Mercedes trilogy in this book, like, so often, it's, like, mind-numbingly annoying. But anyway, so I started reading this book, and the first half of this book is amazing. First of all, it starts out insanely fast, just this blazing, like, there's this creepy murder, the investigators are trying to find out what's happening, they're interviewing people, it's like that classic sort of, like, police procedural, but, like, really interesting and really fast-paced. It's, like, incredibly gripping, a lot of really cool characters, like, it's like, how long is this book, like, 500 and something pages? Like, the first 250 pages or whatever are awesome, and even though I knew the mystery was going to have a really overwhelming and disappointing result because it's a supernatural thing, which sort of like takes a crap all over the mystery. I still really enjoyed the first half. If this had continued and was not supernatural, right? He found a clever way to like resolve the plot in a non-supernatural way. I would probably like this a lot more. But the first half of this book was like a 5-star for me. But then the second half of this book was like a 1-star. So I ended up giving it a 3. Because what happens a little bit past halfway through the book is Holly Gibney shows up and she basically destroys and ruins this entire book. So all the characters we've been living with for 250 pages get basically relegated to background roles where all they do is talk about how amazing Holly is for the second half of the book. And all Holly does is talk about how amazing Bill Hodges was from the Mr. Mercedes trilogy 600 times. And then she solves everything by herself. Like, if there's a question, Holly has the answer. If you need to know something, Holly knows. If there's a problem, Holly will solve it in 2 seconds. I think I consider Holly Gibney one of the most hated characters in all of books for me. People love her. Just a ridiculously stupid Mary Sue that I can't stand.
I didn't like I loved the first half of the show, and then the only thing that I really enjoyed for the second half of the show is I loved Holly in the show.
Right, but in the show they tone her way down. Yeah. She does.
I've never read her.
Right, she does way less, and she's not like this all. So I'm going to give you a quick spoiler. So if you don't want to hear a spoiler of this, I don't know, jump ahead like a minute. So there's this super powerful creature in The Outsider, and Holly, of course, runs up to him and hits him with a sock full of marbles and kills him because she can do literally anything. It's so stupid. Stephen King jacks off to the image of Holly so often that, like, all she does is everything she wants. She's intolerable. She comes in and absolutely ruins this book. This book was amazing, and Holly takes a crap all over it. For you fans of Holly, I apologize, but I absolutely hate that character. Nice, yeah. All right, so next up we have The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This is another Coleridge Girl list thing. This is kind of, I don't know. I liked it, but I guess I sort of appreciated the characters and the ending kind of more than the majority of the book. I really didn't like the first half. I kind of was bored. And the mystery wasn't particularly interesting to me. It gets better. And I ended up liking it overall. I kind of was like wavering between like giving it like a 3 and a 4. So I give it like a really low end 4. But I mean, it's good. I liked it. Not enough that I would want to read any more of it. Like there's a series of these characters. I don't really have any interest in continuing.
I'm reading the 3rd one now.
Yeah, she loves them. Why she's like one of her favorite books of all time. And there are some parts that are cool. The characters are interesting at times. They're not as like interesting as I'd hoped. It's not as funny as I'd hoped. But there's a couple cool moments near the end. I think what's interesting about this is I was thinking it was going to be like a clever murder mystery with fun characters, like a lot of comedy. But what I liked most about it was actually like the really poignant, sort of like emotionally sad elements of this book were actually really well executed. And that's what kind of bumped it up to me from like a potentially like 2 to a 4, is it had a couple of really nice scenes of like emotional despair, which I appreciated. So not all what I was expecting, but you know, it had some pretty good
I think it's going to be a great TV
moments.
series.
I could definitely see it making a really good TV series for sure. Because it's got the kind of like, if you get the right actors, you probably have some really lovable characters. And it's the kind of thing where like, it's like a fuzzy murder mystery. It's like, cozy. It's kind of fun, but it's not like stressful. You're not like, oh no. You're more like, haha, drink some cocoa. Where's that body hidden? You know what I mean? So it's pretty good. I would say that most people I would think would probably like that, especially if you're into cozy mysteries. All right, 13th Tale, yet another one on the Coleridge list. And this is like...
You know, it was 12 for the whole year, though.
Yeah, so I had the whole year to read 12 books. I read 11 of them in the first month because I like to get things done. I don't like to have things to complete. So if I have something I need to do, I just like to do it. I have saved one because it's House of Leaves, which is going to be a nightmare to read. So I'm going to wait till I have like some time off before I read that. So anyway, 13th Tale. This is like old people humping books, right? This Diane Setterfield, she likes books, and she wants you to know she likes books. Like, she doesn't ever want someone to come up to her and go, "Are you a reader?" She wants people to, like, they'll see her walking across the hallway in, like, a business building and be like, "Oh, I know her. She's that girl that likes books to the point where it is a problem." Like, it's about a wannabe writer visiting, like, her idol, and her telling her, like, the secret, mysterious, untold 13th tale. Whoa. I don't know. I found it a mixture of, like, occasionally engaging and, like, often obnoxious, like, but not fun obnoxious, like, I don't know, arrogant obnoxious. Irked me a little bit at times. Yeah, I mean, I like literary stuff. This is, like, more wannabe literary than actually literary. But it wasn't terrible. It was decent enough. The story was decent enough. Like, I thought it was okay. Again, a book that I would probably never have read on my own and would have been completely happy to have never read it ever. But it was a totally tolerable read. It's like a 3, and I don't give out that many 3s, actually, in terms of, like 3 is a pretty positive review for me. So I'd say, yeah, it was solid. Decent. Acceptable, if you will.
Takes a while to get going, though.
Yeah. It takes a while. It never really gets going, to be honest. I don't think it ever gets going. Unlike this one. So here's a classic tome of literary excellence. So you have Mystery of the Ancients, which is an Endless Quest book, number 28. So I collect these because I'm a nerd. These are, of course, choose your own adventure books. You know, do you want to eat the pie? Do you want to stab the llama? Well, you don't want to stab the llama. That's a jerk move. Anyway, I really like these. In particular, like the Dungeons and Dragons ones. This was a little more post-apocalyptic, sort of like barbarian-y, but not really Dungeons and Dragons-y, even though it says it's a Dungeons and Dragons game book. So that put me off it slightly. Still fun. I mean, these are nonsense. They're like for kids. I don't care. I still like them. Choose some adventures. Get killed a bunch of times. Good times. I liked it. I didn't love it. If you're a Choose Your Own Adventure fan, this is one of many. There's not a lot of variety in these types of books, and that's just fine. Okay. Here we go. This is one of the highlights of the month here. So Coolidge Girl forced me to read. So she originally said I had to read No Greater Love by Danielle Steele. But then she called an audible and goes, actually, you might like this one more. I'll let you decide. And because this is the one I found on the shelf first, that's why I read this one. I don't know if I would have liked No Greater Love, but what I can tell you is I did not like Message from Nam. My goodness, this is the most empty-headed, vapid garbage you've ever seen in your life. So this dopey girl, she's like, I'm going to be a journalist. And she finds a guy and falls in love with him. He goes to Vietnam, and as is exceptionally predictable, he, of course, is killed. And she's like, oh, I'll never get over this. My heart is destroyed. How will I ever love again? And like a week later, she finds this other soldier, and she's like, damn, he got that ass, though. And so she's like, completely falls in love with him. And she's like, I love this person so much. He's changing my life. Yay! And then, because it's a Daniel Steele book in Vietnam, he dies. And she's like, oh, no. I'm crushed and heartbroken. How will I ever... Oh, who's this guy directly next to me 3.5 minutes later? So that's just the whole book, is her like falling in love with people, and then they die, and then she's like, oh, I'll never get over this, and she gets over it like a page later. But like one of the last guys who dies, right? We don't find a body, so don't you fret, worry. So she's in Vietnam because she's a cutting edge journalist, even though she's a complete absolute moron. And she's the last day before like the fall of Saigon. So all the Americans are like trying to get the hell out of there. Like the city's under siege. They got to escape. You know, it's a very famous day in history. And as of course, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people everywhere. She's running to the embassy to try to get on one of the last helicopters. And her formerly thought to be dead boyfriend grabs her and goes, oh, what's going on? Can you help me? He doesn't recognize her. He just grabs her of the 61,000 plus people around. And she's like, oh, it's you, Gunther, or whatever the hell your name is. Let's fall in love again. He's like, I don't even know what's happening. But then, of course, in the end, it all works out. If this book was used for kindling, it would be an insult to the fire. Negative 81,000 stars. I hope Daniel Steele is embarrassed that this exists. All right, so next book here. You see, it's the Edgar Allan Poe, The Complete Stories, which I'm making my way through, actually, The Complete Stories. Because although I've read a lot of his stuff, I haven't read everything, so I'm working on that. But that's not what we're talking about now. But within The Complete Stories is the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, which is Poe's only novel. So I read his only novel, and I was like, cool. And it's a little weird. It's like a pirate novel. And the first, 40 pages, just like the main character, Arthur, hiding in the underneath the ship to be a stowaway, and just how it kind of at first ooh, this is nice and comfortable. I'm alright with this, and then he runs out of food, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna die down here, and that's really strung out for a long period of time. Then suddenly his dog shows up. This is on a boat, remember, in the ocean. He didn't bring his dog, as far as we're aware. His dog shows up. It's not a hallucination. The dog's actually there. The dog hangs out for a while. Eventually, he gets out of the ship's hold and has there's a mutiny, and then there's a re-mutiny. So he's with the captain gets thrown out of power, and then Pym and his buddy re-mutinize the ship and take it over again. And the dog hangs out for a bit, and then suddenly the dog just doesn't appear anymore. They don't describe what happens to the dog. This dog is just written out of the story. We never know what happens. Kind of weird. And I think, what's his name? The Moby Dick dude. I can't believe I'm Melville. Herman Melville. Can't think of most of this guy's name. Herman Melville said he based, or he's inspired to write Moby Dick on this book, and you can see why. Because there's a lot of sailing and piracy and stuff, but also Poe's let me tell you about everyone who ever visited this island. And he just talks about that. He goes, let me tell you the proper way to rig up a sail. And he does have these long 10 to 12 page sections. This book's only 180 pages. And he must have 6 or 7 times. He just goes completely off track. And he's soon we'll be visiting this area of Antarctica. Now let me tell you, every human being in their expedition, whoever came to this area before, and then he does it. Why? I don't care. No one cares. It's so weird. And then there's this kind of weird island situation. And at the very end of the book,
You're going to summarize the whole book?
At the end of the book, there's no end. Just so you know. He's in a boat with his friend going somewhere, and they kind of get there and hey, who's that on the ledge? And that's where the book ends. Mid-scene. So if I spoiled this book for you, too bad. It's 250 years old or whatever. And also, you want me to spoil it. There ain't no ending in this book. Okay? It's weird. It's kind of fun. Poe's writing is amazing. So even when he's writing about stupid nonsense that I don't care about, it's still kind of appealing. But overall, it's got some problems. I still liked it, even though it's absurd. And I would say if you really like Poe and you want to read some stuff. What I've also discovered about Poe is his early stuff. He's weird as hell.
I didn't know that.
But no, it's a different weird. It's not ha ha ha, I like murder and betraying people. No, he's what if I just write about a story about a guy who just is made out of rubber and gets bounced off of stuff for a while? It's so weird. He's like, it's all kinds of stuff like that. It doesn't make, the one I just read was about some guy who's got like a really impressive nose. So his nose impresses like the wealthy people. They're like, oh my God, your nose is amazing. But then his dad's like, oh, you're too much of a nose fiend. I don't know if I can truly love you. It's like, what the hell's happening in this story? The story's weird. Anyway, that's some Poe for you. All right. So, it wasn't a great reading month for me, both in terms of books that were recommended to me and books that I chose. So I've owned this book for a very long time, Eragon by Christopher Paolini. And when this book came out, it was massively pushed. Like, you couldn't like go into your own bathroom without someone sticking like a fly, like, buy this new fantasy book, it's amazing. Like, you know what I mean? You're eating dinner, like from out of your potatoes comes some guy trying to force this book on you. It was just obnoxious how aggressive the marketing was in this book. I don't recall ever seeing this heavy marketing for any book that didn't have a previous following. So like, yeah, the follow-up to Harry Potter's probably were bigger marketing, but they already had a big audience. This was like, no one knew who this person was. And it's just over the top, everyone forcing you to read this. So someone bought this for me for a gift. Yeah, when it, like around that time, like, I don't know, like 15 years ago or whatever. And it's just been sitting on my shelf for like well over a decade. And every so often I'm like, maybe I should read this book. But I just never got around to it. And then finally I got around to it. And it sucks. I mean, it sucks epically. It's like a cluster. It's a collection of every generic fantasy trope you've ever seen in your life. It's so lazy. The dialogue is so clumsy. The characters are so stupid and pointless. It just rambles around. The plot hardly moves. Like, the goals of the plot aren't even like, I mean, they're like, I guess it's clear, but it's also like, why? Like, I don't know. It's horrible. It's horribly written. I will say this. Some of the action sequences are actually surprisingly well written. It's the dialogue that is just disgustingly goofy, and the characters are dumb. People love this book. I don't know why. I guess they got sucked into the marketing. This kid, he wrote when he was really young. He was like 15 or 16 or 18 or something. So, like, you can kind of forgive it for not being very good because, like, what do you expect from a teenager? He's not going to be that great of a writer. But I guess his parents own, like, I'd say S.E. Hinton's slightly better. She's also awful, but, like, better than this. So his parents own a publishing company, and, like, no doubt they were the reason why it got published and got pushed so much, because I can't imagine anyone that actually likes books would ever, like, publish this.
When someone's kid liked it, so that's how
so that happens. If you know the right people, you're going to get the right stuff. So and I'm sure everyone told him how great it was, even though it was complete garbage. So, like, I don't even blame this dude. You know what I mean? It's not even his fault that he wrote a crap book. He's a kid. Of course his book's going to be crap. And he never probably improved it because everyone kept telling him how good he was. So, like, he was sort of set up to fail, although I guess he's also set up to be just fine because he probably sold like a billion copies, so he's probably not concerned that I, random jerk on YouTube, didn't like his book. But it's awful. This is one of the crappiest things I've ever read.
The Duke of Omelet.
But I did still give it a 2 stars instead of 1, primarily because, 1, some of the fighting scenes were pretty good, and also because I kind of felt bad crapping on this guy because, again, he's like writing it as a teenager, and for a teenager, it's good. For a published book, it's awful. And also, it's a series. It's meant to be a series. And I'm okay with books that want to be series, but you got to close off your main storylines. You can have overarching, bigger storylines that, like, are continuing your plot. But when your novel ends, you should have some sort of end to some part of the main storyline. This is just like, it's like, okay, I'm done writing this now. I'll continue later. And that's how the book ends. Like, end your book. I hate when they don't end the book. Lazy. You didn't finish the book. Not a fan. If you like fantasies, don't read this. All right, so here's another example of a book I would never read, but was forced to read by Coleridge Girl. And this is Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
You gotta talk louder.
Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. They're about these pants that travel and gradually, over the course of many years, use their legs to strangle and murder each member of the Sisterhood.
That doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't happen. But I wish it happened. Instead, it's just, I mean, look, people love this book. It's massively popular. There's like 1 million sequels. It's beloved. There's a movie.
4 sequels.
Okay, 4 sequels. And it's about high school girls and their stupid high school girl drama. And I know a lot of people relate. If I was a high school girl, I would probably enjoy reading this book. But I'm an old cranky man, and I didn't give one poop about what was happening in this at any single time. I don't think there was a single sentence in this book that I cared what was happening. That being said, it's fairly well written. You know what I mean? It's not like full of like cliches and repetitiveness, and the dialogue rings fairly true for the most part. The characters, although annoying and stupid, and I wouldn't care if they get hit by a bus, are each individual characters. The characters are a little bit like slice of trope from each part of the high school girl world a little bit, but it's not too bad. It's not too bad on that. So even though I didn't give a crap about this and kind of was like disinterested the entire time, I still say give it a 3 because it's well executed. And I bet there's millions of people who would really love it. I just am definitely not one of those people. All right. Here's another book I kind of had some high hopes for. Another one Coleridge Girl forced me to read. And this is like an old school 80s, 90s
You should move the
horror.
It looks like
Yeah, you can still see it though. Horror book, and it's short and it reads pretty quick. And it's a mess. So there's this couple and they kind of don't like each other that much, and they're like a ghost house. And like the main female protagonist basically just keeps having sex with this ghost. And it's like, oh, I'm pretty sure that was my husband. I'm like, nah. There's no way you think this is your husband. You just keep banging this ghost.
know?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably at least a little bit of difference between your husband and a ghost penis. I've never engaged with a ghost penis, so I couldn't say for sure. But I suspect I might notice the difference. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's just such a goofy story. The cops in this story are so stupid. It's like, if you have to have a book, I hate that this is a pretty common thing, where you have to have the cops be so overwhelmingly stupid that like they can't, otherwise you can't have the plot. So here, I'm going to give you another spoiler for this book. Light spoiler. Well, not that light of a spoiler. So if you don't want to hear the spoiler, the ghost house, skip ahead. So at the end, the ghost guy gets like kind of somehow burnt to ash, basically. I don't want to explain why. And then the cops are like, oh, how are we going to explain who killed this guy? People are going to want to know who killed this person. And the guy's like, no, it's fine. He's ashes now, and it's windy. Implying that, like, because the guy was burnt in a fire and the wind will blow the ashes away, it's totally cool to not talk about the murder. What?
There's a ghost anyway.
It wasn't, no, that's just what they want you to think. Anyway.
That's an example of one of those books
that book
like,
was
you love when
kind
you're
of
12 and 13, and I'm sure if I went back.
It's weird. It's a weird book. I really didn't like it.
I'm sure if I went back, I would not give it
That's
a 5
another
star.
book where I was just like, please end. Just no, please don't have any more pages in this book. But there were more pages. So many more. Okay. Oh man, trust me, there are books I like, just not really much this month. So, once again, in my quest to read the new Stephen King book, Holly, I also had to read this. This is a collection of 4 novellas, If It Bleeds, and one of them has Holly Gibney in it, so I was also heard that, like, this story gets ruined I don't know how you can ruin it any more than it ruined itself. So 4 stories in this. The first one is Mr. Harrigan's Phone. That one is like, it's totally okay, but it's the kind of thing you've seen 8 billion times before. It's like, okay, we've seen this story. Is it going to be anything different? No, it's not. So it's okay. It's solidly written. The characters aren't remotely interesting. It kind of drags a little bit. And, nothing new there. So I didn't really like that. The second one, is it Life of Chonk, is it called? Yeah. I think.
Yes.
Oh my God. So this is like, I don't know what he was trying to pull here. It's like this one person, like 3 segments of their life, but they're all stupid. Like in the first one, like all of the universe lives within Chuck's imagination, and they're trying to be like, look at all the complexities and depth of people and their philosophies. Then we see him as a kid. I think it's Stephen King attempting to write something philosophical and literary, I guess, but it does not work for me. Maybe it works for somebody else. I just thought it was just so reachy and trying to be clever and absolutely failing. Didn't like it. Third one, If It Bleeds. This is the Holly story, and this is basically like Redux Outsider. it's like the exact same story again with like the same, it's a different villain, but it's the same villain. Like it's not the same exact guy, but he's like the same species of bad guy, I guess. And it's exactly what you expect, what I expect this time out of Holly Gibney's story. She's basically all powerful. Although every once in a while she'd be like, oh, I sure am timid and nervous and I don't like going out in public, as she's like pounding on people's doors and like forcing interviews on people and running, and like, okay, a person with supposedly extreme social anxiety, she certainly is really good at constantly harassing people for interviews and stuff. So, you know, I think most people that I know that have social anxiety don't like making phone calls. Forget about knocking on strangers' doors and demanding face-to-face that they answer questions all the time. But hey, everyone's different. And don't forget, she's Holly Gibney, so she's literally super powerful. She can do anything. So that was more actual garbage. The only one I liked a little bit was the last one, which is Rat. This was kind of fun. It's like this dude who goes to a secluded cabin to write a book. I mean, of course, the Stephen King author is going to be the main character. And he's like snowed in. I kind of like that. And he's sort of like starts hallucinating, or maybe he's not hallucinating, that this rat wants to like make a deal with him. It's kind of stupid, but I thought it was kind of fun. It felt a little old school throwback. So I liked that last one overall. That was the only one I liked. Again, Harrigan's Phone, vanilla, two middle ones, hated. Last one, solid. All right.
You know what's cool in Eragon?
You're saying?
What's cool in Eragon is I like how the page numbers on the side.
Great. All right.
Don't you say
Next
this
up, we
now
got some
about this
Gables. So this is one of College Girls' most favoritist books. She references it all the time. She put it on my list of crap I have to read. And I was promised that the narrator was very funny and very witty and engaging. And I was told that even though I probably won't care too much about, you know, her bumbling around talking about flowers and dresses she wants to put on, I'd be more interested in the fact that she was witty. I didn't think she was very witty. She's kind of a dope. She sort of bumbles around, does a lot of stupid things. College Girls cursing. Yeah, and she's a dope. I know plenty of kids that are smarter than this person that are in her age.
in 1800, whatever?
I don't know. Like, basically what happens is she does something stupid. Everyone gets mad at her. She apologizes most charmingly, and then they all forgive her. And then she does a bunch of other stupid stuff, and it's just that on a circle. So, I don't know.
Is that her walking on the roof?
Yeah. It's just, there was nothing, there's no story. It's just a girl doing derpy stuff and then apologizing for it over and over again.
She's so cute.
I mean, I didn't like her at all. I mean, I guess she names a few things, kind of funny names, but there's nothing much going on other than that.
Optimistic.
Anyway,
positive.
she is really positive. So if you're like, I really want a book where a character is just really, really positive, even though her life's not so great, then I can see that having a bit of an appeal. And if you just like when people like walk through grass and like screw stuff up
like
and
nature.
write on slates, then you might like part of this. I don't know. I didn't really like it very much, but a lot of people do. So yeah, there's that book. And I think the last one, I gotta pause here for a second. I think the last book I read this month, which is also a Coleridge Girl book, was Presumed Innocent. I read that on Kindle. Apparently there's a thriller about thriller. There's a series with these characters. I don't know what they're called. I didn't read anymore, but this of course is a famous movie starring Harrison Ford from like the late 80s, early 90s. I don't remember. This book's kind of old. It came out, I think, in like the 80s, early 80s, and it is dated. Like there are some things in here that people probably wouldn't be comfortable putting in books for like their protagonists. So like, yes, like you'll have a villain and the villain's like, I'm going to say racist and homophobic stuff all the time because I'm the villain. But in this book's like, I'm going to say racist and homophobic stuff and we're just regular characters. It's like, oh, okay. And there's like a lot of random sex in it. Not a lot, but there's a few scenes where you're just reading along. And like, how about the scene where we have really descriptive sex, and some of it's like uncomfortably descriptive. And as I mentioned before, I hate reading sex scenes in books because whenever I read a sex scene in a book, I picture the author sitting at a keyboard or a laptop or whatever, writing the sex scene like, ha ha ha,
well,
finger in the butt. Right. So I'm like, I hate reading sex scenes in a book. So anyway, the first half of this book is pretty boring. We learn way too much about the power structure of the city and the legal office and the political stuff, and it's not interesting, but it is necessary because the second half of the book is actually really, really good. And for it to be really good, you have to know all the crap from the first half. So I get it. I just wish he had done a better job sort of like mixing that in as the story was going forward, instead of being like, here's all the setup for 200 pages. Now we'll get to the actual stuff. So yeah, the court stuff was cool. The mysteries were cool. There's like some side plots and stuff that were kind of like not very interesting and kind of boring. Again, I can see why they wanted them in there because it works for some of the story, but I would have preferred a little less of that. But anyway, this is cool. It has a twist, which I called. It has a second twist, which I called. And after the second twist, I was like, ha ha, you didn't fool me, jerk. But then there was a third twist that I did not see coming. And I was like, well, Scott Turow, you son of a bitch, you got me. I very rarely get tricked in books and movies, and it's always a pleasure when it happens. So I was very pleased to see that I did not see the final twist coming. And I was like, bravo, sir. And it's good because it's one of those twists that, in retrospect, you're like, oh yeah, that fits actually, because there's enough little, like, the things for the final twist are subtle. They're not a part of, like, the main story, which makes it very clever, I think, because, like, it's in there. They give you enough little bits, so you probably could have figured it out, but it's enough off the beaten path that it's hard to figure out.
That's why I'm glad to hear that it still holds up, because that was what I always loved about that.
Yeah, most of the books that Coleridge Girl gave me for this month were from like older things that she liked. Not all of them. And most of those I did not like, but this one I did really like a lot. 4 stars, and one of them, probably the second favorite thing that I read this month behind poor old Evelyn Hardcastle constantly being killed. All right, I think that's all the books I got, unless I forgot something. Pretty sure that's it. So there's my wrap up. Rough month for me in terms of not liking much. Because, again, I read a lot of stuff I probably knew I wasn't going to like too much, because it's just like off the
Right now he's reading a buddy read that I've already finished.
Yeah, so she's forcing me to read another book I don't want to read. I got to stop doing this thing where I read books I don't want to read, because it doesn't really work out for me too often. But anyway,
You have to read 11 in a month.
I want to get them over with. I still have one left of the Coleridge Challenge. I have about 10 and a half months to read that book. I think I'll get it done.
And
We'll see.
The rest of this month to finish Love and Gelato.
No one cares about Love and Gelato. People only like gelato. Love doesn't matter. So anyway, that's that. That's my wrap up. Maybe you liked some of the books I didn't like. Probably you are, because I don't like them. Probably you did, because I don't like that many books. Anyway, books. Boop.